Going by just what she says in this presentation, it is clear she thinks meat is very healthy and that everyone should be eating meat. So I recently checked out Carol Adams' presentation, her argument at the Oxford Union, the Beyond Meat debate, not Beyond Meat the brand, but like moving beyond meat as a society. Carol Adams is a vegan activist, so obviously she was arguing in favor of moving beyond meat, and she had some interesting things to say.
Specifically, your vote tonight expresses your allegiance to or rejection of a white supremacist patriarchal worldview.
So now I want to talk about Mikhaila Peterson's presentation, the argument she gives. She eats a meat-only or almost meat-only diet, so of course she is part of the opposition. She is against moving beyond meat. She starts her talk, the first several minutes or so, talking about her own experience.
I rewrote my entire speech an hour ago and decided just to embrace my story because my life isn't actually focused on spreading a meat diet around. I have a podcast and other things to do, but I live this every day, so I'm here to talk about it.
And her own health problems growing up.
I tried going the medical route, and it didn't work. When I was 23, my skin had started to break down from rashes, and those stopped healing. I couldn't sleep on my shoulders, and I was so mentally unstable I couldn't have a relationship. My right wrist felt like it was going to be next for my third joint replacement.
Eventually, she gave up essentially all foods except for meat, and how that essentially cured her.
I went back to school for biomedical science, and I decided to reduce my diet dramatically just to rule it out, not because I thought it had anything to do with my health. I cut it down to meat and whole foods, and within 2 months, it eliminated nearly all of my symptoms, and I managed to get off of SSRIs and Adderall and immune suppressants.
First, I have several videos about people, sometimes specific people, or just talking generally, people who don't do well on plant-based diets for various reasons, often digestive issues, IBS, stuff like that, various allergies, right? It's going to be really hard to be vegan if you have like a soy and nut allergy. So I don't want this to come across as like I'm just against anyone who says that they can't eat a plant-based diet. Not at all. Second, I've talked about the problem with elimination diets in other videos. Not really a problem with elimination diets themselves, but with how they're used, how they're interpreted. The problem with getting advice from people following some sort of elimination diet indefinitely, and saying, I gave up these foods, or I only eat these foods and it cured me. I don't think we should make any sort of diet changes for ourselves based on someone else's experimenting with their own diet. It's too easy for us to forget what we actually did, like what we did or didn't eat, to ignore maybe other things we were also doing at the time that could have contributed, right? Like someone saying they stopped drinking milk and it cured their acne, while not mentioning or just forgetting that they also completely changed their skincare routine at the same time. Could it be that it really had more to do with the skincare routine? Maybe it had nothing to do with the dairy at all. Who knows? If someone's condition was being exacerbated by some food or foods that they were eating, and now on the carnivore diet they are no longer eating those foods, then of course it makes sense that they would see a reduction or even complete elimination of their symptoms. But that doesn't mean that it is the carnivore diet specifically that is making them feel better. It's far more likely that they would feel better on any diet that eliminates those specific foods that they're sensitive to. It's very similar to people going vegan and feeling better and seeing a reduction or complete elimination of certain symptoms, even people who were type 2 diabetic no longer needing medication. It's unlikely that this is a result of eating zero animal products, but far more likely that it's just a result of eating better. Now, I'm sure people on all sides will say, yeah, but I tried all of the diets. I tried every single one, and the only one that worked was low-fat vegan, paleo, carnivore, whatever. Yeah, no, you haven't. I'm not trying to be a dick, but everyone says this and it's just impossible to believe. There are so many different diets. It is highly unlikely that you, number one, tried them all. Number two, tried them accurately, right? So like actually keeping carbs low enough to reach ketosis, or actually keeping your fat low enough, 10% or below. And three, tried them for long enough. And even if you think you did all of these things, there is a high chance that you didn't. We know that people are really bad at keeping track of what they eat, at estimating like how much they've eaten. It's why using food surveys in research is typically a bad idea, and it's why so much of nutrition research is unreliable. We shouldn't be impressed by testimonials, by anecdotes for any diet. They seem really impressive, but they just aren't. They just don't tell us much at all. The plural of anecdote is not data. Anyway, back to Mikhaila's presentation. She goes on to spout kind of rapid fire, typical keto, paleo, carnivore talking points.
The demonization of red meat was based off of a few hypotheses based on observational studies that have been proven to be false. Saturated fat has slowly been disappearing as the cause for heart disease in scientific literature because it's not the cause for heart disease. The need for fiber is a myth when you don't consume plants.
That's not really a paleo thing. That's more of a carnivore, maybe keto thing. Although most keto people still eat some plants. So I guess that's more of an exclusively carnivore diet thing.
Our populations need high levels of vitamins. It turns out that's only necessary because we're consuming so many carbs, we can't handle the amount of sugar in our body. As soon as you eat more meat and less processed food, that need goes away and vitamin deficiencies recover.
Point is, I've already covered this stuff in numerous other videos. I talk about the fiber thing, for instance, in my video on carnivore diets, so I don't really want to go into that all again here, but I'll put a list in the description of relevant videos of mine to check out. What I really want to address, a couple different things. First, several people in the comments of my Carol Adams video, because I mentioned talking about Mikhaila Peterson and saying she's like a carnivore diet advocate. And there were people saying, no, she's not really. She just eats this way for her own health, that she's not really promoting it to people. And she essentially says the same thing here, saying this is just what works for her, and she would love to be able to eat differently. She would love to be able to have, I think she says cake and fruit, like she loves those foods, but she just can't eat them.
I thought I was only going to be on that for a month, and then I was going to be able to reintroduce foods back in and eat normally. However, that wasn't the case. It took 6 months for my autoimmune symptoms to go away, but then they did, and my depression went away. And I was in remission again. Now, since then, I've tried to reintroduce plant foods because I actually like cake and fruit and other foods, and I don't really want to be on this diet. But I can't introduce anything without having my autoimmune symptoms come back.
And she says that she has like a group, a Facebook group or something of 7,000 people who have had the same experiences as her.
I've got a Facebook group now, and this is just small to start, but I have a Facebook group now with 7,000 people who have all been brought to this diet because they've tried the medical route and they have no other options and they're miserable and they're recovering from diseases.
So while she may not be promoting meat only generally to the general population, she is promoting it to certain people and really acting as a kind of authority figure when it comes to certain conditions, certain autoimmune diseases. And more importantly, generally, talking about the general population, it's not like she's promoting plant-based. Going by just what she says in this presentation, it is clear she thinks meat is very healthy and that everyone should be eating meat. She talks about it being good for babies' brains. Again, the whole saturated fat cardiovascular disease risk thing being bullshit, basically.
A potential solution that should be seriously looked into is radically simplifying diet with fewer ingredients, going back to a time when we weren't all chronically ill, and that involves dramatically increasing red meat consumption and decreasing plant foods.
And again, fiber is unnecessary, and we can live exclusively on ruminant meat.
My main concern is people eating healthily, and meat is the healthiest and most improperly villainized food out there. Ruminant meat is the only food that people can actually survive on as a single food without supplementing anything else, which is the perfect elemental diet for a sick person.
This is extreme stuff, extreme fringe diet stuff. This is akin to like a vegan saying vegans don't need to take B12 because we can get it from eating dirty organic lettuce or something. And she ends her presentation talking about this study. That's how she presents it, a study released by Harvard, where 2,029 respondents reported eating a carnivore diet and seeing many health improvements.
All respondents with diabetes discontinued non-insulin injection agents. 84% discontinued oral medication, and 92% of participants on the carnivore diet with type 2 diabetes discontinued insulin altogether. Over 2,000 people were studied who were on the diet for over 6 months. And there was a 90% reduction in all diseases.
She presents all of this totally uncritically and basically as the punchline to her talk.
In my opinion, this type of potential treatment for disease needs to be studied further before we move beyond meat. Thank you.
The reality is this is all self-reported. These are respondents. These are people responding to an online survey. No blood was drawn. Nothing was confirmed. Everything was self-reported. It is the least you can do and still call your work a study. That doesn't mean it has no merit, but I find it impossible to believe that if, let's say, things were switched, if it were behavioral characteristics and self-reported health status among 2,029 adults consuming a vegan diet, I find it impossible to believe that people like Mikhaila wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, pointing out the limitations, pointing out the problem with self-reporting diet information, as the authors themselves do. But when it's supporting a carnivore diet, no criticism whatsoever. Okay. Point is, clearly she does not think vegetarianism is healthy. She is absolutely promoting a diet that hinges on killing animals for food to everyone, not just specific populations. And if everyone is going to eat meat, that means factory farming. You cannot feed billions of people on free-range, happy, humane meat. The yield is too low, the amount of land you need is too great. You have to pack animals into tiny spaces and care about their welfare as little as possible. Which brings me to the second thing I want to talk about, and it's possibly the strangest thing to me when it comes to, again, keto, carnivore, people promoting meat-heavy diets. Why don't they ever talk about in vitro meat, lab-grown meat, clean meat, cultured meat, whatever you want to call it? Maybe some do, and I'm just not aware, but all I've personally seen from people like this is dismissal of animal welfare, or like, oh, well, I eat organic, free-range meat. Like that solves the problem. In Mikhaila's case, she doesn't mention it in this presentation or anywhere else I could find. I searched her name plus any relevant term, clean meat term I could think of, and didn't come up with anything. Which again, it's just strange. You would think of all people, these would be the ones championing clean meat, right? I mean, if you think that you need meat to be healthy, wouldn't you want people to ramp up work and research into clean meat so that one day you can continue to be healthy without supporting so much animal cruelty? Especially coming from her. To give her credit, she's not like a lot of these carnivore people, a lot of them men, let's be real, who it becomes like a very identity thing for them, and there are no downsides, and meat is manly and natural and the perfect food. She admits that she would like to be able to eat other foods, that she doesn't just want to eat meat. So yeah, of all people, I would expect her to be gung-ho on clean meat. That said, she does make a comment about evolution and how people could dare to or be so naive to think that we can just feed people plant-based alternatives and not knowing like the potential long-term costs of doing so.
And forcing the reduction of the amount of meat eaten. A somewhat narcissistic venture under the assumption that you know what these new man-made foods do for people's bodies better than 2 million years of evolution, something evolution could produce, is a massive and dangerous mistake. We've evolved eating meat, the food and fat that enabled us to develop the brains we have. Assuming we can replace that with something we've created, naive.
So perhaps she would make the same sort of argument when it comes to clean meat, like how dare we try to copy Mother Nature, recreate Mother Nature's hard work. We can't possibly know the long-term consequences of eating lab-grown meat, which would be a really stupid argument, just to be clear, or I guess a really ignorant argument. It would show just a profound lack of understanding of what clean meat is. But again, I don't know how she feels about clean meat. I'm just talking out of my asshole, I guess. But I do honestly find it pretty shameful that the meat diet people aren't promoting clean meat. I think more than anything, it shows an obsession with their own health and just a lack of care for animals. A couple other things I just thought about. First, to be clear, no one's taking away her meat. That seems to be the assumption with this presentation, that moving beyond meat means taking sustenance away from people who don't do well on vegetable matter. I mean, to be fair, I want to move beyond meat completely. Again, clean meat is a thing. Lots of smart people are already working on it. It has been sold. Was it Singapore? I think that one restaurant was actually selling clean chicken. And also, like, regular cruel meat is going to be around for a very long time. Most people are not vegan and have no intention of being vegan and want to continue to still eat meat, and that is going to be around for a very long time. Mikhaila and anyone alive today have like nothing to worry about. No one's gonna take away your steak. Also, autoimmune diseases are going to be cured. The advancements that have been made just in the last like 20 years or so in Mikhaila's lifetime have been astounding. Experts know so much more than they once did. And if you read from a lot of these experts, there's a lot of optimism and expectation that their efforts will one day lead to a cure. And it's far more likely that this cure would come about probably long before we have moved beyond meat, in the sense that like people don't eat regular cruel meat anymore. Oh, one other thing. There wasn't like any laughing in this one. There was lots of laughing during Carol Adams' presentation. There wasn't any during Mikhaila's, which I guess makes sense. Again, for the first part, she's talking about her own experiences and these horrible health issues that she's had. I can't imagine someone laughing during that. But again, once she gets to the like fact-based portion where she's just saying all the stuff like we don't need fiber, we can just eat exclusively ruminant meat. I don't know. I would expect some amount of snickering maybe, because those are, again, pretty fringe, out there, silly statements. Maybe it just comes down to discomfort and like what's being advocated. What am I trying to say? Often we laugh because we're uncomfortable, right? And nothing makes people, particularly white people, more uncomfortable. If I remember correctly, it looked like the audience was mostly white. Nothing makes white people more uncomfortable than being called racist, or being insinuated even that they're racist. I think that the only thing that's worse is what, like pedophile? It's like pedophile then racist. So I guess it makes more sense that people would laugh at that sort of stuff, the stuff that Carol Adams says, partially out of just being very, uncomfortable and taken aback. Whereas someone just saying fiber's unnecessary, like, oh, okay. Who cares? Who cares what you think? It's not like an attack, and prefacing it with this is just my own experience type stuff like she does can definitely, I think, help people let their guards down maybe. And framing it as like you're trying to take away the food I eat. Like, you're the baddies vegans. You're trying to take away my food and make me unhealthy. Whereas like Carol Adams and others, it comes across more like judging, right? You eat meat, you're a bad person, that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess it makes sense why there was more laughter during hers than during Mikhaila's. Although, to be clear, I think there should be lots of laughter when someone says we don't need fiber and that evolution knows best. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to know your thoughts, particularly if you've watched this. I'm not showing the whole thing here. Much of it I'm not showing, just little clips from it. So definitely go watch it yourself. It's only like 10 minutes long, I think. I'll link to it in the description. So yeah, check it out. Let me know what you thought. And if you like the video, give it a like. Subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be notified when I upload a new video. Thank you so much to all my patrons at patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. I do upload 2 little exclusive videos there a month for $5 plus patrons. Just talking about what's going on with me, pregnancy, cat. That's pretty much it right now. Pregnancy and Gizmo. Anyway, thanks again. New video soon.
And how dare we, as a first world country and developed nation, spread word around the world that eating meat is immoral and unhealthy.
I just had to share that part because it's so goofy. Vegans and others advocating for veganism, vegetarianism, aren't telling people who need meat to live to go vegan, to give up meat. We're talking to people living in developed nations, people who have access to numerous plant foods, for whom eating animals is a choice. Again, there are people with medical issues who may need some amount of animal products, but for the vast majority of us, we don't. And really, what she's saying here is that we in developed countries shouldn't do or promote anything that would make others who can't do it feel bad, right? So like, how dare we talk of climate change and encourage electric cars when there are those who can't afford any car? How dare we adopt new medications that work better and have fewer side effects when there are those who don't have access to basic antibiotics? It's actually very woke of her, which I know she would not appreciate. But this is what far left people do. People on the far left, they accuse people like vegans who are advocating for lifestyle changes as not being inclusive enough and making people feel bad because, again, some people can't afford it, don't have access, whatever. It's just really funny to hear something like that come out of her mouth. And I think it shows, again, how full in on the carnivore stuff she really is, how like not neutral she is, and really how anti-vegan she is. She will say really goofy stuff as long as it makes veganism and vegans look bad.